Okay, I'm finally recording Finn's birth story after a month. I really wanted to record it because I want to be able to remember all the details that I'll start forgetting soon. Um, so it was a little over a week before he was due, February 22nd. It was a Tuesday morning at 4 a.m. and my water broke. When I was in bed, I was switching from my right side to my left side, sleeping, and I felt my water break, and it felt like I was like peeing. It was the weirdest feeling ever. And then it just like kept coming. So I slowly was like, not slowly, I quickly was like, tapped Chris's shoulder and was like, Chris, don't freak out, but my water just broke. And he shot out of bed and turned on the lights as fast as he could and was like, all right, let's do it. Like, it's go time. Freaking out. And then I was like, all right, what do we need to do? Like, what's the next move? And so I was like, all right, I'm going to call the 24-hour line at my OB office. So I called them, and they got me in touch with the midwife on call at South Shore Hospital. So I called her. The midwife on call was like, okay, like, do you want to labor at home for a little, or do you want to come in now? I was like, oh, I definitely want to labor at home for a little bit. And she was like, okay, just give us a call around like 9 a.m. and let us know like how you're doing. So I labored at home for a little. We tried to go back to sleep. Chris went back to sleep. I don't know how. And I like sat on the yoga ball and did like different exercises, and I tried to lie down and go back to sleep, but there's just no way that was happening because like today was the day that my baby was going to come. So it was just weird having your water break first as a way to start labor, because it wasn't like, oh, I might be in labor, like I'm having light contractions, I might be in labor. Like, no, my water was breaking, like it was happening. He was coming. He was on his way. No matter what, like he was coming soon. So it was really exciting, but really scary. Like I was definitely shaking a bunch and just like so scared. But like really excited. And so then around like 9, we called back and they were like, oh yeah, you should definitely be coming in. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, the midwife earlier kind of was like relaxed about it. They were like, well, you can still take your time and like shower and pack, but like make your way over here because your water did break and like there's obviously a risk for infection. So we just want to monitor you. So we did that. We went to Scituate to bring Winnie to my parents. And then we went into the hospital, and we were in the triage room, and we had a midwife come in. The midwife that was on call, she came in and she checked my cervix to see how dilated I was, and I was literally only like a fingertip dilated, so like a centimeter dilated, and that was a little discouraging. But I was also like, oh my god, it's just the beginning. Like I'm definitely gonna dilate really fast. Like it's all good. I wasn't having like contractions yet. I was definitely like cramping, but nothing was consistent. So at this point, she's like, all right, we're gonna get you set up in labor and delivery. There's definitely a high chance we're gonna have to like induce you to get contractions going, since your water did break and there's a risk for infection. Like we're gonna have to probably induce you somehow. And I was like, ugh, I really don't want to do that. I really want them to come on naturally. But she was like, we're probably just gonna have to induce you. So she gave me the options, and I chose the option of the Cytotec, which is like this pill you stick in your cheek, and it like, this is like the easiest way to get contractions going, but you have to keep taking a pill every few hours if the contractions slow down. So I was really hoping that I only had to take one pill and that like it would really get the labor going, and that wasn't the case at first. So it got labor going, and I was having contractions. They were pretty mild, but like very bearable, and they were like slowly like getting worse and worse. But then my contractions started to slow down, which is when you normally have to take the pill again, take another one. And I was like feeling really discouraged because I was like, I don't want to take more medicine. But she was like, all right, in like a half hour, we'll do that. And so Chris and I were like, no, let's try like doing all these things. Like, let's try getting up and moving and all this stuff. So we walked the hallways for a really long time. and that got things going for me, so I didn't have to take any more medicine. So we walked the halls, and my contractions were getting really strong, like really, really painful. So I would have to like stop and like bend over, and like I could breathe through them. And then like the second the contraction stops, like you just forget that it ever happened. It's the weirdest feeling. And like contractions are the exact feeling that I thought that they would be. A lot of people are like, this is nothing I could ever imagine of feeling, but like they like were exactly what I pictured. I don't know why. So I start having like more intense contractions, and I'm like trying to sit on the ball during them, but like the only position that was comfortable for me was putting my arms around Chris's neck and like my head in his shoulder and like slow dancing like while I was having one. That was the only position I wanted to be in like the whole labor as they got worse and worse. So then I got back to the room and I told her, I'm like, my contractions are literally a minute apart. And she was so happy that I didn't have to take any more medicine and that like it was getting things going. So at this point, I don't even know what time it is. Like my timeline was like so off. Like everything's a blur. But at this point, it's like late. It's like getting to the point where Nanette, my midwife that I had been seeing my whole pregnancy, was about to start her shift, which I was wicked happy about. And so she started her shift at 7 p.m. By the time she got there, things were like getting intense. Like I was definitely in a lot of pain. And she was just like, oops. She was extremely encouraging, but she was like, all right, she's trying to find ways for me to like relieve the pain before I would have to have any interventions. And so she told me to get in the shower. I went in the shower for like an hour and put like the shower head over my belly, and that helped, but it was still like excruciating. So then that happens, and then I get back in bed, and like they're monitoring the baby. Everything's good. Contractions are still coming, like less than a minute apart for the longest time. And at this point, it's like 8 p.m. maybe, or 9 p.m. And she's like, all right, I'm going to check your cervix for the first time. This is the first time my cervix had been checked since I came into the hospital like 11 a.m. and was only like a fingertip dilated. This was the first time they checked it, because they can't really check it often after your water breaks, because there's like such a high risk of infection. So she checked my cervix, and she literally was like, oh, Catherine, like this is so great. Like you're like 2 to 3 centimeters dilated. And I was like, no, like, no, there's no freaking way. After hours and hours of laboring, I'm only 2 to 3 centimeters. Like I was in disbelief. I couldn't even believe it. I was just like so upset, so discouraged. And she was like, no, like it's gonna be okay. Like, and I was like, but I can't take the pain anymore. Like how am I only 2 to 3 centimeters dilated? And this is like, I can't take the pain. Like it's gonna get so much worse. So she's like, you know what, just get the epidural. It's okay. Like you can get it now. It might actually help speed things up, because you might be so tense that it's preventing your cervix from opening. And so I was like, all right, like hopefully that's the case. Hopefully it doesn't slow things down for me, whatever, because like when you get an epidural, there's definitely a risk of it slowing your labor down, because you're not like mobile anymore. And so that happens. They're like, you need to try and get some rest, like all this stuff once you have the epidural. So they bring in the anesthesiologist. I was like really nervous to get it, because like, I don't know, just I didn't want it to be painful. Everyone in the room was like, it's not painful at all. Like, don't even worry, it's not painful. And I'm like, okay, great. It was freaking painful. Like it was painful. I have a low pain tolerance, but still, like it was not fun. It was not fun. And but it was quick. It was over really quick. So then the first like 30 minutes of my epidural, I was literally on cloud 9. I couldn't feel a single contraction. I'm like, this is so great. Like I love epidurals. Like this is amazing. They kept showing me on the monitor all the contractions I was having, and like I couldn't feel any of them. Then I started to feel them, and then they start to get worse and worse. And I'm like, okay, what's the point of having this if I'm just going to be in extreme pain again? So then they brought the anesthesiologist back, and he like upped my dosage so high, and I at that point couldn't feel a single thing. Like I felt like I was like floating in space. Like I was watching these people flip my legs back and forth, like touch my legs, do all this stuff to me, and I had a catheter put in, and like I couldn't feel anything, and it freaked me out like a lot that I couldn't feel anything, because at the beginning of the epidural I could still wiggle my toes and like I felt great, and now I was just feeling awful. But they were like, you should try and rest now that you have the epidural. So I tried like all night. I was like all night, and then it was into the morning now. It's past midnight. I tried really hard to like rest, and I couldn't. Chris was sleeping. Like there weren't any nurses really in the room anymore. Everyone was just kind of like trying to let us rest, and I couldn't rest. So then at like, I don't know, 2 to 3 a.m., I had like a panic attack, because I'm like, a minor panic attack. So I was like, I can't do this anymore. I just feel like so awful. I can't rest. I'm so tired. I can't stand not feeling my legs anymore. It's a terrible feeling. And then around 5 a.m., she comes back and she's like, I'm gonna check your cervix again. She checks it again, and I'm only a 5. Like it's been over 24 hours after my water broke, and I'm only 5 centimeters dilated. And at this point, I'm just like, what am I gonna do? Like, how am I gonna get to a 10? Like, are they gonna have to do a C-section? Like, I was just so nervous. And she left. This is where I like kind of forget this series of events, because like everything's a blur. But she left, and I was like, oh my God, like I had a panic attack. The worst panic attack I've ever had. I just broke down, like hysterically crying. Like Chris is hysterically crying with me at this point. That it was just like, just such a long labor. And I was only at a 5. I was just so discouraged, and I could not stand not feeling my legs anymore. So they shut off my epidural. They shut it off, and I like started to like feel more sensation, but I was definitely still like, I definitely still had the epidural in my system, and like wasn't feeling a lot of the pain still. But she comes back an hour later. So this is 6 a.m. now. So this is 6 a.m. and she's checks it again, and I'm at a 10. And I've never been happier to hear something. Like the fact that I went from a 5 to a 10 in an hour was just like, it was beyond me. So then she's like, we're going to start pushing. Like, I'm going to get things ready. But in the meantime, every time you have a contraction, start practicing, like, bearing down. So I started, like, practicing pushing. And it, like, I was definitely feeling the contractions. They were very painful, but they were, like, motivating in a weird way, because they were, like, helping my body, like, feel the need to push. So then she gets all ready. She's like, do you want to watch your labor? Like, do you want to watch it? And at this point, I'm so delirious. I'm like, sure. So she pulls up a mirror, and she has me watch my delivery, like, in a mirror. And so I'm pushing, and, like, I'm seeing his head come out more and more, and which is, like, honestly such a motivating factor to, like, see how close he was. And it was, like, the coolest thing ever to be able to watch. And so she's, like, interacting with us. She's like, feel your baby's head. Like, feel his head. So we like felt his head, and like she had Chris do the same thing. And then we're getting closer and closer. I'm a few pushes away from him coming out, and I look over at Chris, and he looks like he's gonna pass out. And I was like, oh my God, like, is this about to happen right as our baby comes out? Like, Chris is going to be on the floor. So I'm like, completely turn my attention away from pushing this baby out and everything to like, Chris, you need to, like, we need to figure this out so you don't pass out when our baby comes out and you don't miss his birth. And Nanette, our midwife, calls in a nurse that has to sit next to him because he's going to pass out. And so he gets it under control, and he's sitting down, and he like gets color back in his face. And then she has me keep going. So then I push him out, and she did everything in her power to prevent me from tearing. And I am insanely grateful that I did not tear with my first baby. I can't even believe it, but I got to watch her like do what she did to prevent it in the mirror. And it was like the coolest thing ever. She's like insanely talented. And so that was so crazy. But the feeling of him coming out was like, oh my God, it was wild. Chris and I both reached down, and we both pulled him out onto my chest. But I tried to pull him up higher, and the nurses were like, no, don't pull him up higher, because the cord was short, and like I was pulling my placenta out when I pulled him up. So anyway, she delivered my placenta, and I asked if I could see it, and I saw it, and it was like the coolest thing ever. And then when he came on my chest, it was like the craziest feeling that it was like a living being, and like he was crying, and it was like the cutest sound I've ever heard in my life. And then the next hour or so was just like I was on cloud nine. Besides the fundus massage, the fundal massage was the worst. It was probably worse than any of the contractions. Worst pain ever. They press on your stomach after you have the baby to try and get out any blood clots that are in your uterus, and it's the most painful thing in the entire world, and nobody warns you about it. Like, nobody talks about it. And oh my God, it was so awful. But it lasted like not long at all. So the next hour we got to enjoy like just trying to get him to like start feeding for the first time, and like I got to eat a meal for the first time in over 24 hours, like a real meal, and it was so good. And I was just hydrating. I got to drink and eat, which I couldn't do on the epidural anymore. And I was just so happy that I didn't have the epidural for the delivery. Like, I was able to have them shut it off without it being like so painful. Like, it was still lingering in my system, but I still got to feel everything. So like I really did like that aspect of it. But yeah, the rest of the time was just like so nice. And then the rest of the time in the hospital was like, I couldn't believe how long it had been since I had slept, and it was really scary. And he had low blood sugars, which was really sad because we had to watch him get pricked in the heel like so many times, and like just he had to have formula, which I was really upset about, but I obviously got over because I knew it's what he needed. And we were just so happy to come home from the hospital. Like, it was such a relieving feeling. We had to come home in a literal snowstorm, which was just put the icing on the cake for the whole experience. But yeah, my labor was super long and pretty traumatic, and it took me a few days to like get past the trauma of my labor. But I kept trying to just think of the actual delivery, because the actual delivery was the most like euphoric experience in the entire world. And we're just like so happy that Nanette delivered him, because she delivered me and Chris, and that was like the coolest feeling in the world. And she was supposed to be out on break the week that he was due, because her husband was having back surgery. So leading up to my labor, I was like, oh, she's definitely not going to make it to his birth. Like, I was so bummed about it, but he came a week early because he knew that he needed to be delivered by her. So that was really cool. But that's how he came to be, and that's how we got him here. There's Finn. We love him. Well, thanks for listening, everyone.